many people in Moldova, they clearly understand that the only reason why Russia has not invaded Moldova yet is just because the Ukrainian army is not letting Russian army to come to the borders of Moldova. I need to remind you that part of Moldova, Transnistria, is occupied by Russian forces for several decades already. So, yeah, it's a very, very geopolitically tough here.
Moldova's president is blaming foreign forces for the knife-edge results in the country's referendum on EU membership. It's pretty clear she means Russia, who are accused of trying to fix the vote. Currently, it is nearly exactly 50% yes and 50% no. We're now up to 98% of the votes counted. So have the votes been fixed? Oleksiy Goncharenk is a Ukrainian MP we've spoken to many times on this programme. He is now in Moldova as an international observer for the Council of Europe. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
When do you think we might actually know the official outcome?
I think in several hours, but it's clear that it will be in favor of accession to European Union, because now near 100,000 votes, which are still not counted, they are mostly from the international polling stations abroad, United States, Canada, a little bit from Europe. So it's clear that it will be in favor of accession of European Union. I wrote it on my X in the night, many hours before, but it was mathematics showed, but it will be very close. So I think the final result will be near 51 for accession and 49 against.
Right. And of course, Moldova's president has said that there's been foreign interference. Basically, she means Russia, who have been accused of trying to influence the vote through money, lies and propaganda. Those are the accusations which they deny. We'll talk about that in a second. But is there a feeling in Moldova, actually, that people do have two opinions on this? If you take, Russia's influence out of the equation for a minute, is it fair enough to say that actually not everyone believes one thing?
No, definitely. We see the result, 51 against 49. It means that country is really divided half and half, with a very slight majority. So, but I would like, Russia will try now to show this result as a kind of those who voted against European Union, they are for Russia, which is not true. Because, Euro skeptics, for example, when it was Brexit, it didn't mean that those British who voted against for leaving the European Union, they wanted to join Russia, right? It's, Moldova, it's a little bit different story, but still, it doesn't mean that they're for Russia. They're just Eurosceptical. And you know that Euroscepticism is widespread. So Moldova shows us this again. But definitely Russia did everything they can in order to receive a negative result of this referendum. They invested millions, hundreds of millions of euros in this. They invested a lot of efforts, and that was a big, big fight around. So in any way, this is a victory for pro-European forces here, but it is really very, very close, and that's true. Also, it was not just referendum, it was the first round of presidential elections.
Yeah.
And it definitely will be the second term, because current president Maya Sandu, which is pro-European, we can say, she will receive near 44%, and her main opponent from socialists and communists local, they will receive near 25. So it will be the second tour, and it will be very tough in 2 weeks.
What has been the kind of the support level, moral support level from Moldova towards Ukraine over the last couple of years while Russia has been invading?
Yeah, Moldova is a very close neighbor, and Moldova accepted hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees in the peak moments. Which for such small country, which Moldova is just several million population, it's a lot of. But and many people in Moldova, they clearly understand that the only reason why Russia has not invaded Moldova yet is just because the Ukrainian army is not letting Russian army to come to the borders of Moldova. I need to remind you that part of Moldova, Transnistria, is occupied by Russian forces for several decades already. So yeah, it's a very, very geopolitically tough here. And definitely the war in Ukraine is something all people here are looking at. But Russian propaganda tries to show them this war that it's not, that is kind of a reaction of Russia for Western movement of Ukraine, kind of all this sort of bullshit. And unfortunately, we see that propaganda works, that part of the population still believe in this. But in general, people of Moldova are very supportive of Ukraine. And I felt it myself, being here as an international observer. Many saw me and even recognized, and they were very, very supportive.
Okay. Well, it's good to talk to you, and thank you for filling in some of that information for us. That's Oleksiy Goncharenk. He's a Ukrainian MP. Of course, he's in Moldova as an international observer for the Council of Europe. As soon as we get that result, of course, on first of all, on the actual referendum, we will bring that to you here on Times Radio.
Moldovans have been voting for their presidential election and also deciding in a referendum whether to abandon Russian influence and one day join the EU. Moldova is one of the poorest countries in Europe. It shares a border with Ukraine. There are 11 candidates in the election. And Paula Erizanu is a journalist and author in Moldova and joins me now. Hi, Paula.
Hi.
Hi. Paula, how has the democratic process been going, first of all? There were fears of Russian influence over the vote itself.
Yeah, so we just had a press briefing by the incumbent Maya Sandu. She basically said that they have proofs that 300,000 people were targeted with vote buying by a criminal network. So that is Shore's network, in order to compromise the referendum and the democratic kind of process.
Right. How does she allege that happened?
Well, she didn't go into the details, but previously we did have the police and the intelligence services announce that they had caught this scheme where 130,000 people were being bribed through bank cards linked to bank apps from Russia, so internationally sanctioned Russian banks, where people got money online and then they were able to kind of get the cash out through Transnistria, the breakaway region, or the region controlled by Russia in East Moldova, just on the border with Ukraine. And there was also an independent investigation done by the Ziarul de Garda, where a journalist went undercover and spent 3 months with one of the kind of local teams of this network. And she basically confirmed what the police said and showed the ways in which these manipulations were being done.
Okay, so who are the top candidates then who were standing for election? So as you said, there's the incumbent Maya Sandu, who is pro-Western, isn't she? But there are 10 others, many of whom favour closer relations with Russia.
Yeah, so Sandu came first. We only have the partial results, so 90% of the votes have been processed, and Sandu comes first with 38% at this stage, and right next after her is the former General Prosecutor Alexander Stoyanoglu with 28%. He was dismissed by Sandu at the beginning of her mandate, and he is he's standing basically for the so-called Socialists Party. It's a pro-Russian party rather than a left-wing one. So it's very likely that they will be the candidates to go in the next round of elections in 2 weeks' time.
Right, so there'll be a runoff again. And is that because that's close then, that it could have been possible, could it, for Sandu to have won at this stage?
So in order to win from the first stage, the candidate needs to get more than 50% of the votes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so those allegations then of bribery are pretty significant.
Yes. So the difference between her and the runner-up is more than 100,000 votes. So she's got 500,000 votes and he's got 375,000 votes. The margin is quite close, and also with the referendum, at this stage it looks like no has an advance of around 90,000 votes. So it's very tight results.
So no, we don't want to join the EU.
Well, the question wasn't actually phrased quite as clearly as maybe one would have wanted to. The question was, do you support modifying the constitution with the European integration of Moldova in sight, something like that. It was quite clunky. But basically, the idea was that they would change the constitution to anchor the EU integration into it and make it a kind of national project.
I mean, presumably that is something, Paula, that has come to the fore because of the invasion of Ukraine and I suppose the comparative feelings of insulation against that Estonia and Lithuania and Latvia, who've been admitted into the EU and NATO, have. Is that right? It's since the invasion that people are asking this question again in Moldova?
Yes. I mean, there are analysts who would argue that Moldova has been pro-European since its declaration of independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, and that most of its prime ministers, all of its presidents, all of its parliaments were supporting a kind of pro-Western approach in the documents they signed. At the same time, of course, the war in Ukraine has sped up the process of applying for to become a EU candidate, and now Moldova and Ukraine are both have this candidate status, and they have both started negotiations with the EU. So the process was definitely sped up by the invasion of Ukraine, but at the same time, both countries have been aiming towards EU integration for a long time.
Okay, Paula, thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Paula Erezanu there. Thank you, journalist and author in Moldova on their elections that they've been hosting today. And as she was just saying, the president's made a statement in the last half an hour saying that she believes that there has been Russian interference, particularly with the referendum, which was a cumbersome question, as Paula was suggesting, but a referendum that was essentially, do you want more integration into the EU or not? The current president, the incumbent president, believes Russia has been bribing people to make them vote to stay away from the EU. Any case, there's going to be a runoff between her and the more pro-Russian candidate in a few weeks' time. So we'll keep an eye on that here on Times Radio.